we're both professors, so we thought that was cool. Who got kind of tired of the stereotypes, right? He was writing this stuff that was really thoughtful and expressing himself as a writer at the highest levels, and nobody wanted to see that, right? Nobody wanted to read anything from a black man who was actually evolved and intelligent and provocative in a meaningful way. They only wanted to read sort of the crazy ghetto stuff, right? So he did a little test, and he actually wrote a book. I think the book was called like FUCK, like literally, and he pretty much pretended to be a thug who was on the run, who just got out of jail, and pretty much spoke with really jacked up broken English. And of course, white people loved it. The book became a bestseller. It won literary awards, and they were talking about how realistic it was. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminded me of when Denzel was in Training Day, and how he got all those awards for Training Day because people thought, oh my God, this is so authentic. This is such a great performance. And anyway, just speaking of Denzel, though, who's up there, who's right there with the Jeffrey Wrights of the world. I put Jeffrey Wright and Denzel in the similar categories in the sense of like talent level. I think Jonathan Majors was on his way to that level. Unfortunately, we have yet to determine how that ends up. But I went to see Fences in New York, and I was in the third row. I decided to splurge on some tickets, and I sat in the third row. Denzel was in it, and when I saw his energy on the stage, I could really tell why he's so successful. Like there was something about seeing Denzel perform up close that helped me realize that energy is important. Energy matters. In fact, it also reminds me when I sat right with Farrakhan for 2 hours, just he and I talking, and the amount of energy that he had. Just I mean, the energy in a private space was very similar to his energy. If you were talking when he was speaking at the Million Man March, and I was just so astonished by that, and I learned a lot from that experience, and it was, of course, an honor to sit and talk to the minister for all that time. And with Denzel, I'll say this: when I saw him perform, I remember thinking, even if I didn't know who this guy was, I would know that he was a star. Like I would just know that he was something special. Whoever, yeah, I'd be like, well, whoever that guy was, he's going to be big one day. So a lot of times, when people make you think that levels of success is all based on luck, honestly, the only people who really, really believe that nonsense are lazy people who really try to tell you that everything you've ever accomplished is just based on luck, and that it could have been anybody, and that you were just fortunate. Don't buy that nonsense. If you worked your butt off, I mean, a lot of y'all worked hard to get to where you are. You became very successful because you made sacrifices. You had a plan. You busted your butt. You stuck with your goals. You didn't give up, and now you might be where you want to be. Some of you are still getting there, but a lot, and you're on your way. But some of you are already there, and I want to applaud you because I think that you should be acknowledged for the fact that you got something different, likely because you did something different. Right? If you do what everybody else does, you're going to get what everybody else gets. Think about this. We are up on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we're talking about wealth. Think about how many people are sleeping. Think about how many people are not going to wake up until the football games come on this afternoon. I'm gonna watch the games too. I like the football, but I'm not. I may not be sitting there watching a football game for 4 hours. I got work to do, right? But I will watch the highlights. I'm a football fan, but I'm also a bigger fan of this game called life, right? I'm a bigger fan of this game called competitive economics and economic warfare. I'm a bigger fan. I pay much more attention, not to the team that Jerry Jones owns, but I pay attention to the team that Boyce Watkins owns, right? Jerry Jones is never going to pay a bill in this house. So even though I am a Cowboys fan, you all need to pray for me because it's a tough time for us. The last 30 years have been tough. Even though I'm a Cowboys fan, I'll never be more of a fan of Jerry Jones's house than I am of my house. So whatever your last name is, if your last name is Cooley, LaShonda, you need to be a bigger fan of the Cooley house than anybody else's house. Anthony Ruffin, you need to be a bigger fan of the Ruffin family than the Ravens. I know you love the Ravens. I love the Ravens too. Lamar Jackson, he played for Louisville. That's where I'm from. Taquana Logan, Team Logan, right? So that's what we're doing. That's called pride. That's called self-love. That's what that is, right? And actually, when they were predicting which cultures have the most successful people, they found that cultures that have, and they actually, in this particular study, they felt like the Nigerians have something special, some secret sauce that a lot of cultures don't have. And they said one of the things the Nigerian culture tends to have, not to stereotype, but they said that a lot of it syncs up to just a lot of pride, like being proud of who you are. Right, not believing that you have to become somebody else in order to fit in, and just saying this is who I am, and I'm going to stand on that. And so, in anyway, so just in fact, just yesterday, as I watched this movie, American Fiction, my wife and I are going to do a review on it on Dr. Boyd's TV later on. We have a podcast called Pillow Talk, and it's also on Spotify. If you just look up my name on Spotify, you can find it there. And part of that conversation with him was it was his dilemma was a wealth dilemma, it was a power dilemma, it was a self-love dilemma. It was an issue that in which this guy, this very smart black man in this film, had to pretend to be somebody else in order for him to find so-called success. And I think that part of his journey was there was a lot to it, but I imagine part of it was sort of asking how many trade-offs am I going to make in order to fit in, and what does success really look like, right? Because sometimes success means being who you're supposed to be, even if the rest of the world doesn't understand it, even if the rest of the world doesn't respect it. Trying to fit in with the crowd is not something that it tends to be very rewarding from a personal level, but the world will pay you for fitting the stereotype. The world, if you're a black woman, the world will reward you for behaving in a stereotypical way as opposed to behaving in a way that's authentic to who you're supposed to be. And what makes these trade-offs easier though is when you understand economics. And we'll even just start with that movie American Fiction for now, because since that's the topic, that's where we're kind of starting. But with that movie, one thing I also saw was I saw this class of educated black people who didn't feel like they had a place in the world. Right? They said, "Gosh, everybody's paying attention to the rappers and the thugs and the comedians and the hoochies and whatever the Cardi B types and everything else. They're not paying enough attention to us, right? I can write a great novel and no one will read it. I can make a great movie and no one will go see it because I don't fit these stereotypes that white people have come to expect from me." And Dr. Claude Anderson writes extensively about that, and we study this every single Wednesday night in our Powernomics training. Which, if you guys want to get an invite to that, just text the word stock to 87948. Text stock to 87948. I'll send you a link. You can join us for Powernomics training on Wednesday. I guarantee you're going to love it. But anyway, so what as I'm watching this movie, I got it, right? I understood it. And Issa Rae was in the film, and Issa Rae, she wrote this article. I forget. Sorry, she wrote this best-selling book. She was the author of a best-selling book in this movie, and the book was like, so it had some stereotypical title like "Y'all Be Tripping" or something like that. And he was really annoyed with the fact that her book was taken off, whereas he'd done this deep literary work and nobody was paying attention. But they had a really interesting debate where they went back and forth. And she said one line that was really interesting. She said, "So it sounds like your beef is with white people, not with me. That, that me being who I am is not what's really hurting you. It's the fact that there's not a space. Pay attention now. I want y'all to hear this, that there's not a space for both me and for you, that white people have not carved out a space for the intelligent, educated black person and the not so educated black person, right? Or we haven't carved out a space for the classy and the ratchet, right? They carve out spaces for the ratchet because they believe that that's who most of you are. That's what they believe that most of us are. That's what they think we identify with. And I said that's a really good point that she made. That it is obviously, the choice of those who control systems and capital and businesses and media to decide, okay, which black person am I going to pick? The smart guy or the dumb guy, right? The one who's expressing the depth of his humanity, or the one who fulfills a stereotype that makes us laugh or makes us comfortable. Well, that's where wealth building exercises become critically important. Because when I'm sitting here and I'm watching this movie, American Fiction, and I saw Jeffrey Wright's character. He's a college professor, about 50, 52, 53 years old, who is not a stupid guy, who is very frustrated by the fact that the world seems to run away with ignorance. My wife laughed and she said, "I'm sure you can relate to that." And I said, yeah, I really, 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 really can. I get that. I understand that. I understand, that there are certain spaces as that I can go to as a black man that wants us to do better, where I'm gonna get thrown out, ignored, ridiculed, whatever. Right? I know this is gonna happen. But then what I told my wife is, I said, see, and this is the part that they're missing. This is the part that I believe most of our people are gonna figure out probably in the next 20 to 30 years. It's very simple. I said the difference between me and the guy on that screen is that he's a college professor working for somebody who is still trying to get into this system that does not want him. I abandoned that system a long time ago. I took my bags, packed them, walked out the door, and said, I'm not coming back. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go find my people. I said, I'm going to go. I said, I know that there are people out there that can appreciate an intelligent black man. There are people out there who can appreciate a person who believes in strong black families. There are people who can appreciate a black man who says we should do better for our kids. There are people who can appreciate a black man who says let's get our economics together. There are people out there. So I said, I'm gonna do what the white man did. He built a system where he found his people. I'm gonna go build a system where I find mine. Now, my system ain't gonna be as big as his. I don't have $10 billion like Paramount Plus or Warner Brothers or whatever. But guess what? I can scrap together the little nickels I got and start finding my people one by one. And that's what I did. That's what I've been doing for 15 years. If you just got here this month, I've been looking for you since 2008. I've been looking for my people. So that's the key, in my opinion. If you want to really be who you want to be in this world, go find your damn people. Go find your people and accept the idea that you're not going to always relate to all people. But it doesn't matter if you relate to all people, as long as you relate to your people. And that's the solution. That's what I said to my wife. I said, that's why I'm not stressed out like this poor guy on the screen. Nobody gave him the tools. Nobody helped him understand this is not your place. This is not the place for you. Seriously, you're trying to be a poet in a prison cell. You're trying to be a gangbanger in Harvard Yard. You're trying to be a squirrel hanging out with a bunch of giraffes. Like, it ain't gonna work for you. If you're a squirrel, go find other squirrels. That's what you do. That's how you find your bliss. I find my bliss because I have this little system, this little instant. Somebody asked me this morning. Somebody tweeted me. I don't know if he was asking out of curiosity or to be a jerk. I have no idea. But he said, Doc, well, why didn't you teach at an HBCU? I said, what are you talking about? I teach at an HBCU every single day of the week. It's called the Black Business School. We got 162,000 students around the world. You can get started for free, right? So yeah, I didn't know if I could get into those other HBCUs. I applied. I tried. I got interviewed by a Chinese man at Howard University. It was very weird. I said, Why is your Department of Finance being led by a Chinese guy, deciding if I, as an African American, am qualified to teach other African American people? I said, that's crazy, because I could never go to China and find one single Chinese university where the department's run by an African American deciding if Chinese people are qualified to teach other Chinese people. I can't find that anywhere. And so ultimately, some of your systems are problematic and infiltrated, but they're not bad. I have nothing against them. But I said, you know what? I want to create a better space. I want to have a space where not only are we talking about economics, but we're talking about how to play the economic game at a higher level. You see, unfortunately, the reality that HBCUs are going to have to climb themselves out of is that they were designed to teach black people how to get jobs. HBCUs were not created as some sort of noble service for the black community. They were set up so that they could get more qualified black people to come work for white people. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just a fact. Go look it up. Go look up the history. Right. So again, I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not saying that they're not wonderful experiences. None of those things. I'm saying that my argument is that part of the reason that these schools struggle to get their funding is because they're not producing the kinds of graduates that go off and make $1 billion, where they can write a $50 million check to go build a new gym or whatever. They don't have you can't employ people who are employees can't write $50 million checks. Harvard didn't get a $50 billion endowment by producing a bunch of employees. Harvard got a $50 billion endowment because they've got probably about five or 600 billionaires that came out of that school. I got to go check the exact number, but Harvard has an insanely large number of billionaire entrepreneurs that came out of that school. So that's what we need to do. We need to start playing the game above the rim. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about our financial reflection today. What I wanted to really kind of dwell on is, and as you guys know, this is day 21 of our 30 days of to wealth and power, 30 days of financial reflections. Every single day, we're going to pick a topic, meditate on it. If you want to see all the recordings of every training we've done so far, just go to drboyceelevate.com, drboyceelevate.com. With one membership, your whole family can share it. All the slides are yours for life. All the trainings are yours for life. Just do one per day. And then you fill out the reflective journal. The journal can be purchased at drboycebooks.com, and it's called 30 Days to Wealth and Power. So if you hit the search box and search for 30 days, you'll find the journal. You can fill out the journal. And what happens is, as you're reflecting, you're going to write notes on each reflection, on each financial question you ask yourself every day. And then by the time you're done with the 30 days, you will have a wealth plan. You will understand your financial body and have a financial awareness that you've never had before. And that's what I want you to do. You see, if you're sick, and I saw my friend Juiced Up Reese was in here, who she comes to the convention every year. I love Juiced Up Reese. She's a great entrepreneur. If you're sick, the first thing you have to do to get well is you have to have an awareness of how you're doing, right? You have to know that you're sick. Some people are sick and don't even know that they're sick. You have to, if you, some people have cancer and don't even know that they have cancer. They've never gotten a diagnosis. So you have to know that you're sick, maybe figure out why you got sick. And then after you figure out how sick you are, what parts of the body need help, how you got there, then you figure out where you're going to go, right? So this is the kind of awareness that also occurs when you're talking about your financial health. A lot of us don't have an awareness of our financial health. We don't have an awareness of our relationship with money. We don't have an awareness of how money even works, period. And so without those tools, it's very difficult to form a financial plan. A friend of mine told me about a guy she married who was in the entertainment industry. I think I mentioned this yesterday. I'll mention it again really quick, where she thought the guy was rich because he was an entertainer, and entertainers show lots of signals of wealth. The flashy cars and all this other stuff. And she married this guy and found out that he didn't have any money. So she was funding his music career, and she was livid. She was really angry. She felt betrayed about this. And I think and someone asked her, they said, well, did you find out how much money he made and what his financial situation was before you married him? And she said, no, I didn't ask that. And that right there is one of those financial awareness tactics that often gets ignored, but has huge consequences if you make a mistake in that area. If you don't know someone's financial health before you get together, then they will give you, as I mentioned in my book, Financial Lovemaking, I call them financial STDs. There are people that will give you a financial STD, just like they can give you a sexual STD. They come into the relationship with baggage you don't know about, situations you have no idea of. Sometimes it's something like massive student loan debt, horrible credit score, no money in the bank, no prospects for the future. Sometimes it's even more sinister, like a drug addiction or a gambling addiction, or something that might get them killed. Right. And then you merge with this person. And so their problems become your problems. Because remember, remember, I was explaining to you all that economics is gang affiliated. So when you become part of an economic gang, when you get together with that spouse or whoever, and you form an economic gang, well, what do gangs do? In a gang, his problem is my problem. Right. If I'm a Crip and you're a Crip and we see somebody who doesn't like Crips, then and you say, let's go get them, I gotta support you. I gotta back you up, right? That's why you think twice before you join a gang. Well, the same thing is true when you talk about forming the economic gangs that we talk about in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. You have to be thoughtful about what gang you're joining, who your teammates are, because a gang or a group with teammates who have incentives that are misaligned or not equally yoked does not work very well. And when I say equally yoked, I mean just equal in terms of values and positioning and all this other stuff. And one example of an economic gang that's gone bad is the European Union. The European Union pretty much fell apart with Brexit. Anybody give me a yes if you heard about Brexit? Anybody hear about Brexit? You know what Brexit was? Anybody remember Brexit? Brexit was basically Britain saying, we getting up out of here. We like the economic gang called the European Union. It was a cool concept, but we got to deal with countries like Greece that don't share our values. Greece is wasting money. They're financially irresponsible, and we keep having to clean up their messes. We're not doing that. So that's no different from you joining a gang and you got one crazy guy who wants to go and get involved in all kinds of chaos. And you're like, I'm not going to back him every time he does something stupid. I don't want to be on a team with a loser. Right. Or being in a football game where one of your teammates fumbles the ball every time he gets it. So ultimately, the formation of these economic gangs is a critical aspect of economics, but also understanding your role of the gang, understanding how to structure that gang, choosing which gang you want to be a part of. Whose problems do I want and whose problems do I not want? A lot of times, for example, people ask me why I never pledged a fraternity or a sorority. Well, obviously, I couldn't pledge a sorority because I'm not a woman, and I never thought about becoming one. But the fraternity thing, I remember that it didn't make sense to me because I looked at the people that I would be in the fraternity with, and they tended to have a lot of problems. And what would happen is I noticed that if your fraternity brother had an issue, you had to help him out with that issue. If he needed a car and you had a car, you had to loan him your car. If he got in a fight and you were around, you had to jump in the fight. And not to say every fraternity operates like this, right? And again, this is the mind of a 19-year-old. But I remember thinking, I don't have no problems really. I can handle my business. I have the money that I need. I take care of my car. I don't go around picking fights with people. I don't really want that drama in my life. And I remember saying, no, thank you. I got invited to join every fraternity because I had the best grades on campus. So they all wanted to boost their GPA. That was why they invited me. Well, because I was not one of the cool kids. They just liked my grades. But I remember just saying, like, no, thank you. I don't need to be a part of a group that isn't going to elevate me and make and take me closer to my purpose. I saw how the other guys studied, and I was like, I know I study 6 7 hours a day. We're not the same, and I don't want to be in a space. I only want to be in a space where the peer pressure is going to make me more of who I need to be. I don't want to be in a space where I'm going to be encouraged to drink a lot or lay around and do nothing or fit into mediocrity. I want to be in a space where I'm pushed to excellence, right? So the point is to say that I think that being conscious about choosing what affiliations you have is very important. Avoiding the ones that are negative, looking and seeking out the ones that are going to be very positive, and then also understanding your role in those affiliations, like what's my responsibility. And because really, family is the original economic gang, right? Family is the space where wealth is a lot of wealth is lost that could have been created because we still have not yet learned how valuable the black family is as a wealth building mechanism. Okay, so what I wanted to reflect on today is this thing called time. Okay, now time is very interesting in the field of finance. Time is an essential element actually in most equations that show us how much money somebody has after and when they've been investing. Time is literally the most important variable. I cannot overstate to you how important time is in wealth building. In fact, if you were to give me enough time, I could literally show you how to build any amount of wealth that you want. If you give me enough time, if you said, I want my kids to be worth $10 million by the time they retire, I could easily show you how to do that with probably the same amount of money that you spend going out to dinner and going to the mall. If you want to have generational wealth that lasts for 200 years, it's very easy to build if you give yourself time. If you don't give me time, then it's very hard to do because that then depends on luck or maybe some get rich quick situation, and those are not things that we tend to talk about here. So the question I want to ask you is this: I want to talk about time and from a multitude of angles. One of which is the fact that others tend to value your time more than you might value your time. And let me explain it this way. Let me ask this, let me lay out the reflection. Write this down. If you want to get the reflection for today, go ahead and write this down. I'm going to take this off the screen in a couple minutes. So the question is this: do you have a job? And if so, is this work fulfilling to you? If you don't have a job, describe what you're doing with your time. Also, what are you doing with your spare time? So there's a couple of points I'm making here, a couple things I'm asking you. One is just about a general question about fulfillment. How do you feel about the job that you have? If the job does not fulfill you, then that's a conversation you have to have with yourself. Because I personally believe that that fulfillment is a form of wealth in itself. Happiness, there's something in economics called utility. Utility is basically happiness. And one of the things I remember learning a lot in when we went through all the different wealth equations is that really wealth was simply a tool to get to the real thing, which was actually utility, which was actually happiness. So if wealth makes you less happy, meaning it reduces your utility, then wealth is not a friend to you. Wealth is not a good thing, right? So wealth, this is why when people say, does money buy happiness? I say, well, actually, it's complicated. Money won't buy you happiness, but money will help you get the day off work so you can sit at home and use your time to figure out what's going to make you happy. Do you have a job? If so, is the work fulfilling to you? If it's not, then that's a reflection, kind of meditating on that, how you feel, where you want to be, making a plan to make the adjustments necessary, stuff like that. We can talk about that later. But secondly, the second part is really the part I want to dig into for sure is if you don't have a job, describe what you're doing with your time. And also, if you do have a job, describe what you're doing with your spare time. So there's two levels to this, right? If you aren't working and you've got a whole day to yourself, you got 24 hours to do a bunch of different tasks. How do you manage that time? If you are working, which most of us are working on something, whether you are working on taking care of your kids or doing tasks for other people or going to a job, going to the plantation every day, most of us have something that we have to do on a daily basis. But a lot of us have some sort of spare time. One thing I will tell you is this: if someone to ask me, Boyce, in 10 seconds, describe the key to accomplishing whatever you've accomplished, right? I'm not saying I'm perfectly successful at all. I'm just saying that I have accomplished a few things. I would literally say that time management and becoming obsessed with time was probably the greatest advantage that I had starting at the age of 19. I remember at 19, two things that happened in my life that changed my life. One was when I learned that I could decide what my feelings and my emotions are usually going to be by choosing optimism, by being intentional about being optimistic. So for the last 30 some years, because I told you in high school, my deficiency, my challenge was that I was sad a lot. I was very sad. It comes from a lot of stuff, low self-esteem coming from not feeling loved and all this other crap, going to school every day with people that didn't like me. It was a tough experience. I'm not going to lie, but I got tired of feeling that way. It was like being sad or being depressed is like being in a cage. And I said, I'm not trying to be in this cage forever. So I remember figuring out, like, wait a minute, if I meditate on being happy, if I focus on happy things, then I can be a happier person. Because the thing is that your conscious mind can only hold, your conscious mind is like a shelf in the kitchen. And then your subconscious is like the pantry that has all the, let's say thousands of pounds of food back there. But the shelf can only hold maybe six or seven things. So you can only be conscious about six or seven things at a time. And those are the things that tend to drive a lot of our moods, right? And so I realized, okay, if I focus on that top six or seven things I'm thinking about, and I make sure that they're positive and make sure they're affirming and uplifting, then I can pretty much make myself feel better that day, right? Now, I'm not saying that everybody can do this. Maybe some people are really stuck and they just can't get out no matter what. But I will just tell you that that really worked for me. Just literally intentionally reminding myself, let's focus on the positive. Let's talk about positive stuff, right? And maybe we acknowledge the negative, but let's get back to the positive. Let's count our blessings before we count our curses, right? And then the other thing that made a difference for me, that got me out of that hole, that emotional hole. But the other thing that gave me the superpower that helped me to dominate the other students in college, and then it just kind of continued for the rest of my life, honestly, was time management. I don't think the other kids knew how to manage their time. So at 19 years old, I remember sitting there thinking, I counted, I said, wow, I said, wait, 24 times seven. So I have 168 hours in a week. And I remember thinking, okay, so if I sleep 8 hours a day, that's 56 hours. 168 minus 56 is 112. So I got 112 hours left. And then if I go to class for 15 hours, 112 minus 15 is 97. And then if I work a full-time job, 40 hours a week, that 97 minus 40 is 57 hours. So I was like, wow. So I would still have 57 hours left to study and have fun and to live my life. Like 57 hours over 7 days. That's what, seven times. That's 8 hours a day. Like that's like a full-time job. Like I have 8 hours a day to do whatever I wanted. I could still, so what that did was that killed little myths in my head that like a lot of people think if you go to college and you work a full-time job, it's impossible to make good grades. Well, it's impossible if you waste time. But if you're efficient with your time, then I just showed you mathematically how you literally still have over 50 something hours a week to study. And if you're a student and you're studying 8 hours a day, there is no way you're going to struggle in college, right? Even if you study for a third or a half of that, right? So I realized that not only did I have time to study as much as I needed to, I could go to all the parties if I wanted to. I can go hang out with my girlfriend. I can go play basketball. I did it all. I was able to do it all, and people didn't understand. They were like, "How do you do all these things and still make good grades?" And I was taking more classes than most of my friends were. I said, it's just time management, consciousness. See, that's that word consciousness again. I became conscious of my time and I started being conscious of how other people wasted time. So other people would just they would just get up and have no purpose, no goal. They wouldn't write down their plan for the day. They would just sit around and just float around. And because they weren't conscious, they almost like farm animals, just wasting time. And then the test would sneak up on them, and they weren't ready for the test. It's kind of like that. So this isn't just how I think about my day. This is literally how I think about my whole life. It's how I think about my whole life. And this is part of my meditation. This is part of my financial consciousness because when I tell you, when they say time is money, that is not true. Time is not money. Time is more valuable than money. Time creates money. Time is a type of wealth you cannot get back. Time is up here. Money is down here. Money is just this paper that they print in DC. Time, you waste all of that. You can't. It's very painful when you waste a lot of time. Now, I saw some of you were asking me to write down that system. Actually, I put together a whole life class where I actually lay out my whole time management system. You guys can have that for free. Actually, text the word stock to 87948. And I'll send you, when I send you the link to join the Powernomics training on Wednesdays, I'll also send you a free link to join my life class. Just text the word stock, STOCK, to 87948. So I'll send you profit alerts. I'll send you the link to join the class. I'll send you the link to join the Powernomics training, all that stuff, and it's totally free. So just text stock to 87948. I'll send it to you. But that literally made the difference. And the thing was that system worked so well in college that I just kept doing it. I kept using it for the rest of my life. So the question, go back to the central question that I brought to you today for our financial consciousness is, what are you doing with your time? And do you understand how valuable your time is? Do you understand how valuable your time is? Because I don't think you do. And let me tell you why I don't think you do. And in fact, not only do I think you don't, you're never trained on how valuable your time is, but what's fascinating is that other people know how valuable your time is. Like white folks that run these corporations, they know how valuable your time is. That's why they pay you for it. That's why when you get a job and you go to work and you give them 8, 10 hours a day and they pay you for that, that's them knowing how valuable your time is. Because during that time, you're lending them your human capital. You're loaning them your brain, you're loaning them your body, and they're using your brain and your body to achieve goals for their corporation, to achieve generational wealth. So they know the value of your time. The reason I don't know if you're convinced of the value of your time is this. What if you have a black person who is looking for a job and they cannot get one? So instead of going, let's say he wants to be in the NFL and he can't get a job with an NFL team, or he wants to work for FedEx and he can't get a job at FedEx, or she wants to be a work in advertising for Nike and no one will hire her in advertising. What do a lot of people do? Well, a lot of people sit at home and they just wait for a job. They wait for someone to call. They wait for a company to give them an opportunity, or maybe they're applying for jobs the entire time. Do you see what I mean? And so what's interesting to me, and I get it, I understand. I'm not criticizing that process in terms of looking for a job and all that. But what I'm saying is that when you start thinking like an investor and you become economically conscious, what you'll realize is that while it might be unfortunate that you don't have the job that you want, in exchange for having the job you want, you've been given all this free time that you can then invest to do whatever you want with that. Right. So you can invest that time in obviously in personal things like sleeping in, spending time with your kids, stuff, going to the gym. Right. A lot of you learned that during the pandemic. Did anybody remember that? Anybody notice during the pandemic how people just changed? They were like, oh, it's kind of nice to stay at home and work from home and do what I want and spend time with my family. Right. Like people were becoming more conscious. See, the system depends on you not being conscious. The system works best when the people that are being exploited by the system are not conscious. Capitalism's designed to make you into a sheep. So up until the pandemic, it didn't matter how often I would get on here. If you go back and watch a video I did in 2012, you would hear me saying the same thing. Like, look, these corporations are taking so much of your time. There's so many other things you could be doing. People, I don't think a lot of people listen. Not nearly as many people listened then as there were that listened in 2020 when people were sitting at home and saying, gosh, I got all this time. What am I going to do with all this time? So time consciousness allows you to understand what a gift you've been given when you have all that free time on your hands. You can invest that time, and it's not just in the things that are personal health and relationships, but also in wealth building activities. And then when you take that time and you blend it with a little bit of skill, this is why economic training is so important. Like in the Black Business School, we believe every Black child should own stock on the day that they're born. They should know how to start a business by the age of 12. And they should also know the difference between renting and owning assets. Right? These are three things that children should know before they hit the age of 12. If they have these basic skills, then what they're able to do is then take that time that no one else bought from them and invest that time in a way that benefits them directly. Do you understand? It's like if you look at Guyana, my wife and I were in Guyana in 2017. She did a semester there because she's an expert on on many things, but like suicide, right? So they brought her in to study why that was such a problem in Guyana. So we were in Guyana for a whole semester, and while we were in Guyana, there was they discovered oil. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really good for this country because the infrastructure is really, really bad in Guyana. And I remember thinking, I hope they have a good military because I bet you Venezuela is going to attack them at some point to come and take that oil. But then also I was thinking about all the corporations that are going to set up shop to help them drill for the oil. And so the reason that they need the corporations to come in and drill for the oil is because in a lot of countries they don't know how to drill for their own oil. They don't know how to get value from the oil that is in the ground right underneath them. So they have to go give the company, give Chevron or or Exxon a cut of the money to go drill that oil out of the ground. So to some extent, when you have time and you're not investing that time, but you're waiting for a corporation to come and buy that time from you by hiring you, what you're effectively doing is you're sitting on this oil well and you're waiting for somebody to come along and help you drill the oil out of the ground. Whereas I'm saying to you, Black people, that because these deals are so exploitative, because they do to you what Chevron and these other companies do to African countries, where they come and take the oil and set up deals that are so egregious that they can have more oil than Saudi Arabia, yet have all the poverty on earth. Because why? Well, because the deals are incredibly lopsided. The corporations get rich, a couple of officials get rich, and the people starve because they cannot drill their own oil. So what I'm saying to you, it's the same thing happens to you. The same thing happens to you. They come and they extract your talent, they extract your time, they extract your culture, they extract your creativity, they extract your athletes, and they take all these things, they distribute these things, they make money from these things, and then they give you a raw deal where suddenly you have all these rappers saying, man, the record label screwed me. Athletes saying, man, the NFL don't care about nobody. Look at what they did to me. Man, the corporation, look at the corporate plantation. They don't be treating us right. And the question I ask you is, are we at some point going to make a conscious decision to develop our own infrastructure so that we don't have to make these lopsided deals in order to extract value from the resources that God gave us? Do you understand? God gave you your creativity. God gave you your time. God gave you the best athletes on the freaking planet. Ain't no athlete like the African American athlete. And I have no idea why they will never ever link this to slavery. They never explain that the reason Black African American athletes are better than anybody on the planet genetically is because they've gone through more than anybody else. No other group of people can say, we survived the Middle Passage, we survived the slave dungeons, we survived 250 years of brutal slavery. We had breeding farms where they would take the Shaquille O'Neal and breed him with a Sha'Carri Richardson. Next thing you know, you got a 300-pound guy that can run fast as lightning. That's where the Bo Jacksons come from, right? They don't talk about it. They act like it doesn't. They like it. Slavery didn't happen. They were just they were migrant workers. I think that's this. They just don't want to talk about it. But you know what that is. You are so special. You are so special. You are, as Black African American people, we are the ultimate badasses. We are like living, breathing superheroes. Living, breathing super. I'm not even an extraordinary athlete, but do you know that my whole life I rarely met a white boy who could outrun me, out sprint me, or out jump me. And I was just pretty mediocre. I was okay. I wasn't the best. I wasn't in the top 10 in the city, but I was pretty good. I could run with those guys, but I couldn't beat them. Right? I knew guys faster than me. But even I remember thinking that there is no white guy that can beat me. And when I would see a white boy that outran me, I would be shocked. You'd have to search pretty far and pretty wide. You know why? Well, because we got the juice, man. Like black people, we are so extraordinary in so many ways. And everybody really sees that and they extract that, right? They set business models up around that and they end up making so much of the money because they took the time to learn the business models, right? When Whitney Houston shows up and she's the greatest singer on the entire planet, she gets to sit in a room with Clive Davis, a little short Jewish man who went to Harvard Law School. Whitney had to be the best on the damn near the best on the planet to be in the office with him. All he had to do was go to Harvard Law School and learn business and learn the record industry and then go raise some capital. And that gave him the right to not only sit in the room with Whitney, but with a bunch of other talented singers. So what I'm saying is, I think we need to keep producing the Whitneys, but also those who can't be the Whitneys can become the Clives. Do you understand? Without all the weird stuff, without all the Diddy parties. But literally, I think we need to produce the Clive Davises, the people that know the business models, the people that are setting up the infrastructure, the people that can set up the distribution systems. Why is that? Well, because then that means that if you, as a community, if we strike oil the way Guyana did, we can say, no, thank you. We don't need to make some lopsided integration deal with you. We don't need any allies right now. We're going to drill this oil out of the ground and we're going to keep the resources for ourselves. Do you understand how many trillions of dollars were lost in the black community just from the fact that we had no plan, no business plan for hip hop? Very few people had a business plan for hip hop. The only plan people had was to go to another party and make another album. That was all. That was the only people that I know from that era who had a real strong, solid business plan that for hip hop that really got executed at a high level was Russell Simmons. And even Russell had to have partners with these record labels and all that, right? So even his plan wasn't perfect, but he was the only one thinking, "Oh my God, we've got this amazing creativity coming out of our community that can transform the entire world." There's a business model attached to this. So the record labels, they said, "Oh wow, this rap thing is really popular and it's really cool. People love it. It's very catchy." So so they come down and they form this ragtag group called the Sugar Hill Gang, where literally the lady just was like, "Well, I just found three guys that could rap. They just all said they could rap, so I signed them all, and we just made a hip, the hop to the hip to the hip." So a lot of the people that created the original music were like, "Who are these guys? We don't know who these guys are. We didn't co-sign on these guys." Well, the problem is that the cat had left the front door at that point. At that point, somebody else came along, saw what you had, packaged it up. They're not thinking about how dope the song is or how to mix the beat with the drum bass, all that. They're thinking, how do we distribute and monetize this product to a consumer base that is going to actually give us money in exchange for this? So what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, when you talk about financial consciousness, a lot of that comes down to having our children and our families developing business models that will allow us to understand the entire economic game from distribution to excuse me, from production to distribution to monetization. That's what we have to understand. That has to become part of our culture, just like the rapping, singing, dancing, sports, all this other stuff. Okay, so when you're talking about being time conscious, here's what I want to say to you on that. I want you to consider taking that spare time that you have and using that spare time to do something that's going to make you better at developing economic ecosystems. And then also, I want you to engage in these tasks without being at all intimidated by how little you know at this point. I want you to understand that everything has a beginning. All great empires have a beginning. And so you may be at the beginning of a 150-year process for which you will never see the end of that relay race. You may be like my grandmother was. My grandmother was the beginning of everything that I'm doing right now, and this started back in the 1970s. My grandmother's gone now. She hasn't seen what I've done in the last 12 years with you guys, but my grandmother was the seed that started that whole process. And really, you can even go back to my great grandmother and great grandfather, right? Because they planted the seeds with her. So, what I'm saying to you is, I want you to take this time and understand the value of it, and understand that the same way others invest to buy time from you, you can make an investment and use that time to achieve a purpose that matters to you. See, a person that has plenty of time is never a broke person. A person that has plenty of time is always a wealthy person, because time translates into wealth. This is not just me giving you my opinion. This is an actual mathematical fact. I can write down equations right now that show you how time turns into wealth. It may not seem clear, but that's what it is. So never ever think you're not wealthy just because you don't have any money. In fact, a person who has a decent amount of money but has no time is, in my view, less wealthy than a person who has a lot of time and very little money. Now, there's more I can say on that, but I'm not going to confuse the issue. I want us to focus on our point of meditation. So let's talk about the value of time and how time is a valuable asset. Now, we've talked about things like the $5 a day investing plan. If you don't have one, make sure you text the word stock to 87948, 87948. Text stock to 87948, and I'll send that to you. Or you can also go to blackwealthmasterplan.com and take a look. The $5 a day plan is literally built on you leveraging time to make sure that in 20 years, you never have a poverty issue again. You never have even a working class issue again, to be honest with you, because at that point, your kid has over $100,000 in assets just by investing $5 a day. If they do $10 or $15 a day, then they're going to knock it out of the park. They're going to be extremely wealthy. All you have to do is buy S&P 500 index shares and not sell the shares that you buy, and just do it consistently every week, or set it on auto invest. And that's how you do that. All right. That David Bach refers to that as the automatic millionaire. So the automatic millionaire is basically this idea that there are people who end up the automatic millionaire is based on the idea that there are hundreds of thousands of people in this country who become wealthy by consistently investing small amounts of money over long periods of time. That's what they do. Okay. And so the automatic millionaire is pretty much what that model is built off of. All right. So let's keep going here. All right. So let me move on to the next one. Okay, so let me give you really quickly before we go today. I'm gonna give you 5 little secrets to time management, and I'll talk around each one to kind of help you understand where it's coming from. Number one, prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. What you're going to find is, as you become very busy, and I'm a pretty busy person, is what you're going to realize is that you don't have time to do everything at the highest levels. You just don't. Especially when you get to the point where you're doing things that have significant economic consequences, and priorities are really important. And the reason I have an image here of rocks, big rocks with sand in a glass, is because I learned this method from a book called Traction. The book is called Traction, and they explain that what you have to do is you have to imagine the rocks as being the most important goals that you have. And usually you might want to have like 3 or 4 rocks, maybe 5, no more than 3 to 5 rocks, right? So even in that image, there's more rocks than there should be. There should only be about 3 to 5. And so you think of the rocks as the big goals that you have, and then the sand, those are the little things. Those are little distractions, little tweets and phone calls and going running to the grocery store, just whatever. These are the little things that happen in your life that take away your time. Well, some people never accomplish their goals because the sand fills up so much of the glass that they can't get any rocks in there, right? So they fill up the whole glass halfway full with sand, and you can only get a couple of rocks in there. So what they said is that instead of putting the sand in before the rocks, put the rocks in before the sand. Because what will happen is that when you put the rocks in before the sand will fit in outside of the rocks. The rocks have become the priority. So what I would ask you to do as part of your meditation is go home and say, what are my 3 to 5 rocks that matter to me? What are the 3 to 5 things that matter to me more than anything else? And so for example, on my rocks, there is my family, going to the gym, hanging out, teaching with you guys, managing my team, and maybe I might add a 5th rock sometimes. It depends. And the truth of the matter, honestly, is that if something doesn't fit in one of those top 5 categories, I ain't got time to do it. I don't. There are people that have been trying to have a 10-minute phone call with me for 2 years. I kid you not. And there are people who could call me right now, and I will call them right back as soon as we got off the phone. What's the difference? Well, it's priorities. If it's my kid, if it's one of my kids, I got to talk to him right now because I'm investing in you. You're an important part of Team Boyce and Team Family, whatever. If it's somebody just randomly calling to waste my time or gossip or argue or whatever, I just don't have time for that. I'm sorry, I just don't. Right. And so pick your rocks. And if you find that your depth of rocks isn't wide enough, then maybe add another rock. If you find that it's too broad, then shrink the number, but hit those rocks first every day, and then let the other stuff slide in between. That way you're making conscious, consistent progress towards some major goal that matters to you, so you won't end up like these other poor people out here who are all setting New Year's resolutions who won't accomplish any of them. 90 some percent of all New Year's resolutions never get accomplished. You have to figure out the difference and execute on that. Number two, what's the other thing? Number two is batch small tasks together, or similar tasks together. So a lot of times, what I'll do is I will give myself like a certain amount of time and a bunch of little tasks, like a bunch of phone calls I have to make. I'll give each call a certain amount of time and I'll knock them all out. Or I might get in and say, okay, I've got a bunch of emails to respond to. So I'm going to reply to my emails and my Facebook messages, and I'm going to do it within 20 minutes, which actually links to number three, which is giving time blocks to things so you can have a finite end to any given task. So what I tend to do, actually, I don't talk about it much, but I'll talk about it to you guys, is I live my life in 20-minute intervals. Every 20 minutes, I'm very conscious of time because I notice that when you're not conscious of something, you lose it and you waste it. If you're not conscious of your money, you'll wake up one day and your money's gone. If you're not conscious of your time, like you're just sitting around just letting time waste, then what happens? You look and you say, "Ooh, oh my God, look at the time," right? So that lack of consciousness throws you off. And here's the other thing too. This is what's interesting. I remember I mentioned to you earlier that capitalism benefits when its workers and the people that are driving that engine are not conscious. When you're not conscious of your money, they make more money. When you're not conscious of your time, they get more of your time. When you're not conscious of where you're putting your attention, they take more of that attention away. And I believe that it's similar to how you manipulate a drug addict. And the reason I say this is because a lot of social media is driven by psychologists who use principles where they tap into the same brain centers that cocaine does, right? They use dopamine injections to get you scrolling on Instagram so long that you forget how long you've been scrolling on Instagram. Anybody ever gone through that? Anybody ever gone like from one funny post to another and literally you thought you were going to scroll for a couple minutes, you end up scrolling for like a half an hour or an hour or whatever, right? So that the goal is to tap into you the way they do with a drug addict. And let me take this analogy full circle. When I was writing my book Financial Lovemaking back when I was on the faculty of Syracuse, I remember hearing a story about a man who had a drug issue. He smoked crack, and he said, I told myself I'm gonna just leave the house for a little bit. He lied to his wife, said I'm gonna go to the grocery store, whatever, and I'm gonna run down to the crack house, and I'm gonna go, get a couple hits, and I'm gonna come right back. Well, he was so one thing he did not understand is that when that drug hits your brain, it takes away a level of your consciousness, particularly when it comes to time. Like that's why crackheads will be really skinny because they'll forget to eat, right? Because you're not even conscious of food anymore, right? Because you're thinking about the drug. So anyway, he goes to the crack house. I kid you not, true story. And he said, I started smoking and I took another hit and another hit and another hit and another hit and another hit. He said he didn't come out of that house for 3 days. 3 days because he lost consciousness of time. The drug just took away his time consciousness. And he said, when I came home, my wife was gone, the bank account was empty, my kids were gone. Like my whole life had fallen apart because he lost his consciousness. So I would almost say to you that if you want another little, my 2 cents on success and whatever, I find that really productive people are very conscious of their time. They don't waste their time. And also to be conscious of it and to preserve it and protect it, you got to value your time, right? And valuing your time means I'm not going to waste time. You've heard me maybe talk about how I don't waste time getting into back and forth arguments with people on the internet. I don't waste time sitting around talking to people about nonsense. I don't waste time on things that are not going to help to accomplish the goal. Right now, you can calibrate based on what kind of person you want to be. You don't have to be that strict with yourself, but that time consciousness piece, that maximizes your productivity tenfold. So literally, I look at my clock and I'm like, oh, it's 9:40. Okay, I'm gonna work on this thing I've been putting off. I'm gonna go ahead and work on it till 10 o'clock, and at 10 o'clock, I'm going to stop. And then I'm gonna move to the next task on my list. That's how I get through my to-do list every day. All right, next, delegate 9 core tasks. What does that mean? Well, remember we were talking about what it means to build a sturdy child. In Black Millionaires of Tomorrow, we use that acronym STURDY, STERDY, STERDY. And one of the, you guys remember the acronym? If you don't remember, it's in that previous lecture, drboyceelevate.com. Just log into drboyceelevate.com. You can see that previous lecture where I broke down what it means to have a sturdy child. The D in sturdy stands for delegate. You see, people that build lots of wealth tend to be people that can delegate non-essential tasks. I had to train my wife on that. My wife is she's extraordinary in so many ways as a scholar. She's accomplished a lot, but she's kind of she's a regular Black girl from Gary, Indiana, right? So she has a lot of the habits that I've seen with a lot of Black women, where Black women are the hardest working people on earth in some cases. Not everybody. You can't generalize too much, but y'all know what I'm talking about. You know that stereotype of the strong Black woman didn't come out of nowhere. It comes from the fact that some Black women really are strong because they have to be, right? We know what society does to Black women and what they put them through. So anyway, so my wife, when we got married, I noticed that she did everything. And she felt like she had to put her hands on everything. So it was like, I got to get the kids to school. I got to make dinner. I got to go clean the kitchen. I got to write the research paper. I got to meet the client. Then I got to go pick up so-and-so from soccer practice. And I said, okay, if you keep moving like this is going to wear you down, maybe kill you. Um, I think that we should run our household a little bit like a business. I said, what I want you to do is I want you to think about, so we did a consciousness exercise. I said, I want you to kind of look at all the things you have to do in a given day. And then I want you to ask yourself, which of these tasks do I actually have to do myself versus which task could I actually delegate to another person? And this is where marriage becomes an economic superpower if you do it right. I'm not saying everybody should get married right off the bat. You got to marry the right person, but if you do it right, this is where it becomes a superpower. I said, look, I ain't perfect. I ain't good for everything, but one thing I am good for is I have a little extra money, and we can go hire someone and buy their time so they can take care of the little things that you don't have to do yourself, so you can focus on doing what you do best. You're a brilliant scholar, you're a therapist, you have all these clients that you want to see, you have all these things you want to do. You can do those things and let somebody else pick up the baby from soccer practice or dance class or whatever, right? And so that delegation, I can't tell you how essential that is, and I cannot tell you how much of an opportunity it is to teach that as a core skill to young Black children. That's not taught to kids. Our kids are taught to just be hard workers. They're not taught how to delegate. If you delegate, not only do you work less, but you get more done, right? But delegate requires the R in the word sturdy, which stands for relationships. If I'm delegating tasks, I have to have a good relationship with the people to whom I am delegating. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense? It's all connected. Okay, so if you want to manage time, if you delegate non-core tasks, remember, you are important. You are the CEO of your life. You're the CEO of your family. So as the CEO, you can't be doing every job in the entire company. Some of those jobs you got to delegate, and that requires a time consciousness that allows you to get that done. All right. And by the way, if you want to learn more about the Sturdy model, or you want your kids to join our Black Business School for Children, there's free stuff we can send you. Text the word youth to 87948. If you text youth to 87948, we'll send you some links to the tools we have in the Black Business School. We really want to educate kids too. We don't just want to wait till you get old to learn finances. I think the earlier you learn, the better off you are. Remember, because time is of the essence. So there's a big difference between somebody exposed to finance and investing at the age of 20 versus somebody who's exposed to these ideas at the age of 5. The 5-year-old has a 15-year head start on the 20-year-old, which means that is a couple $1,000,000 in wealth that the 5-year-old has that the 20-year-old does not have. So don't do it the way everybody else does it. We're not doing it like the Dave Ramseys and these other people that are out here. They're good people. I don't have anything against Robert Kiyosaki, none of these people. You can learn from all these people, but in this space, we're all about saying, in very simple terms, Get the kids started on wealth as early as possible. If you want them to win a race, you give them a head start, right? Just like I was a track coach. That's it. If you get a head start, your odds of winning are much greater than if you're starting late. A lot of us start way too late. And then one of the biggest flaws that we have, I think, is that we're sometimes afraid to innovate. We want to imitate white people. We want to catch up to white people. We want to close gaps. I don't care about closing gaps. I don't care about imitating white people. We're not catching up to anybody. We're running away from everybody. If there is going to be a gap, the only gap I want to create is a gap where we are the ones that are in front and other people are trying to catch up with us. That's what I believe that we're good enough to do. I know we can do this. All right, so let's keep going. Last point here. Number 5 is using technology. Technology goes a long way when you're talking about growth and efficiency and that whole sturdy model. So if you remember, sturdy the for children, STERDY stands for systems and technology. So we mentioned technology, delegation, and also relationships. We talked about these three things, and so technology kind of allows you to really get a lot of work done that other people can't get done, because what happens now in this society is that technology is advancing at a very rapid pace. AI is advancing so fast that there are a ton of things that you can do right now that you could not do 6 or 7 months ago. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and become a technology expert, but what I am saying is that as you go on your wealth building journey, or as you go and start that business, or whatever it is you're trying to do, I would encourage you to either keep abreast of the latest technology, or work with people who do, hire people who do. Because what I've noticed is that there are people who do things in the way they were done 20 years ago, and you're going to be working twice as hard to get half as much. And just by sort of being on cutting edge with technology, it not only allows for better time management, but it also allows for just greater productivity. Most of the billionaires that exist in this country are tech billionaires. Most of the wealth in this country is going to the technology firms. So when you have kids that are really good at a certain skill, engineering or math or computer science or whatever, don't you dare just tell them that the only thing they can do is go get a good job. I encourage them to learn technology and then learn entrepreneurship, because the greatest wealth builders I've ever seen in my life are entrepreneurs who know how to use technology, especially if they know how to delegate, maintain relationships, and all these other things we talk about in the sturdy model. So that's why I've told you guys that my belief is that we need to build sturdy children for the future. These are the kids that are going to take over the world. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up on the screen one more time before we go, and also just remind you guys, if you want to get copies of all these trainings that we've done and all the slides and everything, just go to drboyceelevate.com. For the time that we're in this class, we've taken the price and cut it by about 60%. So, and also if you sign up one time, you can have access for life, and it's yours and your whole family can share it. And so the 5 things that I would say to consider when it comes to time management, which is, again, that is a form of wealth management, are prioritize, right? Figure out what first things must come first. You can't do everything. Number 2, batch your similar tasks together if you can. Number 3, schedule time blocks, right? I live in those 20-minute blocks I told you about. Number 4, delegation. Delegation is the key to success in many cases. Number 5 is use technology. All right. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna go on and get out of here for today. I hope that this conversation has been beneficial to you. And I want you to also remember this one important thing as well, that don't forget what I said earlier, that when you have time, you always have wealth. Time is a form of wealth. And it's not me just saying that to make you feel good. If time wasn't valuable, then people wouldn't be paying you for your time. People pay you for your time. They pay you to go to work because they know that your time is valuable. So while they know your time is valuable, you need to also know that your time is valuable. And if you use your time in a proper way, you might end up it being in a situation where I know people where the best day of their life was when they got laid off from their job. It may not feel that way initially, but after they utilized that free time and created something better, they found that they were thanking their boss for laying them off. They were happy their boss let them go, right? So don't waste that time. That time's important. Your kids have plenty of time. Your kids have more time than you. Your grandkids have more time than you do as well. Invest that time, right? Start that wealth growing so you can use that time to grow wealth. Don't start growing wealth 20 years from now. You start growing it now, and so that in 20 years, you'll have plenty of money. And then also you invest that time in knowledge and skills and everything else so that you can be in a position that you want to be. Okay. So I think the word for today would be time. Time. I cannot tell you how valuable time is for me. I think about time every single day, all day long. That is, I live on that principle. I'm obsessed with time. So, and that's been actually a secret in terms of me being able to get some things done that maybe other people might have thought were hard to do. Okay, all right. So anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. If you haven't done this yet, feel free to text the word morning to 87948. That's a special list just for those who are in this class. Text the word morning to 87948, and I'll send you some stuff that way as well. And also, I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We have done day 21, so we're going to get all the way to day 30. And then at day 30, we're going to decide what we're going to do next. If you guys want to continue, I'll do a survey next time and find out where you guys want to take it from here after this month, if anywhere. All right. So, and that that URL, oh, yeah, that's stockoptionsmasterclass.com. So, if you are interested in stock options, I put together a whole stock options weekend masterclass. So, if that's of interest to you, feel free to go take a look. All right. Have a good day, everybody. I'll see you later. Bye bye.